episode number 200.
Hello, you're listening to the Career Changemaker podcast. Having the courage to leave a career that you have worked hard to build and try something else can be tough. So in each episode, we dive into key career change strategies so that you have a clear understanding of what is required to transition into a new role or a new industry without feeling like you have to start at the bottom or have to take a massive pay cut, because hashtag ain't nobody got time for that. If you are ready for frank and honest discussions about how to become a career change maker, keep listening. I'm your host, lawyer turned career strategist and executive coach, Janine Esbrand. Hello, and welcome to the show. I am beyond excited because we are on episode 200. 200. When I first started out with this podcast, I never thought that we would reach this milestone. It was something that I wanted to do, something that I was interested in, but would not have thought that we would have got here. So I want to firstly start out by saying thank you for being a listener of the show. Whether you are new to the show, whether you are a long-time listener, whether you were here when we were called something else, or you've just arrived, I truly appreciate you. The work we do here is pointless if nobody's listening to the show. So having you come and download and participate by listening is something that I really appreciate. There's so many other places you could be, there's so many other podcasts you could be listening to, and so you taking the time to be part of this milestone is very much appreciated. So today I want to share 5 lessons that I have learned from podcasting over the last 3 to 4 years and producing 200 episodes of the show. And these 5 lessons are relevant to podcasting, but also relevant for you as it relates to your career development. I'm going to say what the 5 are, and then I'll go back and break them down. Number 1 is momentum comes from taking consistent action. Number 2 is what you communicate is not always the same as what is received by your audience. Number 3 is you never know who is watching. Number 4, your perspective matters. And then number 5, there are so many other people who are in your shoes. So those are the 5 things I want to dive into today. So number 1, momentum comes from consistent action. I say that because when I first started out doing the podcast, I didn't have my eyes on the prize in terms of reaching a certain milestone when it came to an episode number. I just knew that I wanted to produce a podcast. So I took action episode by episode. I learned how to podcast. I improved my podcasting abilities. I learned how to outsource. I learned how to get support. I learned how to develop my ideas and produce them in this way. But the momentum that has built over the last, I would say, couple of years with the podcast only came because I was willing to put in the action and willing to take the steps in the early stages. And what I mean by momentum is when I first started the podcast, I would get maybe 10 or 20 downloads a week, and then maybe 50 or 100 downloads a week. And now we're going into, having thousands of downloads in a week. And I wouldn't have anticipated that would have been possible when I was first getting my few downloads. And so the momentum that came with just keeping going and just showing up time and time again is what has led us to this point in the journey. And so when it comes to your career, I want you to remember that, because sometimes you can be taking action and you're not seeing the results. Sometimes you're not seeing the recognition. Sometimes you're not seeing the growth or the development. But know that when you keep showing up and you consistently move, you can make a difference. It reminds me, I was watching a video yesterday of a little boy who was learning to ride a unicycle. And the reason why I was watching that video is because the only thing on my daughter's Christmas list is a unicycle. And I was trying to figure out whether or not it makes sense to buy one and how safe it would be. So I was watching a YouTube video, and there was this little boy who started on day 1 trying to ride this unicycle and just kept falling off over and over and over again. And then it showed a whole week of his progress, and the amount of progress that he made from day 1 to day 7 was immense. By day 7, he was actually able to stay on the unicycle, but it was because he consistently tried. He consistently got back up. He consistently kept sitting on it and falling off it and sitting on it and falling off it. That led him to his day 7 and day 8 results. And so I saw that as such an inspiring example of what happens when you keep showing up. So there's my encouragement to you. Keep showing up, stay committed to your goals, and day by day, step by step, you will move towards them. The next one is what you think you're communicating isn't necessarily what your audience is receiving. Now, I mentioned that the podcast had different names. This is the 3rd iteration of the podcast. And when we first started, I was really thinking about the types of people that I wanted to support. And I came up with the name More Than a Lawyer because I was still in my legal career and I wanted to support people who saw themselves as not just a lawyer, who were looking at different options, who were looking at different things that they could do beyond just being a lawyer. Now, that all made sense to me. It all made sense in my head. It totally made sense on paper. But when I put it out there, it wasn't easy for people to find because people weren't actually searching for the More Than a Lawyer podcast. And equally, when I transitioned into the Careers Beyond Motherhood podcast, people weren't necessarily searching for careers beyond motherhood in the way that I had termed it. But when I transitioned the podcast to the Career Changemaker podcast, based on feedback that I was getting from clients that I was working with, I recognized that career change was such a big piece of the puzzle for people and such a big question mark for many. It made sense to give the podcast that name. And as soon as I did, we had an exponential amount of downloads. We had so much growth because people were finding the podcast through searching career change. And this podcast is one of the first that comes up when you search for career change. So the lesson that I learned there was, whilst my perspective was, I want to share this with people and this is what I want to talk about and this is how I want to position it, that isn't necessarily what the market wanted or what the market could find. Right? And so I want you to really bear that in mind when you are positioning yourself for opportunities, when you are preparing for presentations. Are you somebody who loves learning, loves reading books, loves digesting podcasts, but you're short on time? If that's you, then you are going to love today's sponsor. Blinkist is an app that allows you to learn a lot faster. They have taken the time to summarize amazing books by leading authors so that you can take away the key points without having to read through the whole book. And they've just started summarizing podcasts too. It's an amazing app and it's going to be an absolute game changer for you. So if you want to start learning more in less time, start off with a free trial and get 25% off if you choose to sign up by heading over to careerchangemakers.com/Blinkist. It's all well and good what you want to do and it's all well and good what you want to communicate, but you need to make sure that it is aligned with the audience and what the audience is likely to receive and what the audience is looking for. And so if you're in a job search process, this is very, very, very relevant. If you're in a job search process, this is very, very relevant because too often I see people giving very generic high-level answers or high-level responses or high-level descriptions when it comes to their application document, but they are not speaking to what the audience actually wants to see, what the company, what the hiring manager actually wants to see. And so it's important that what you want to communicate and what the audience wants to see is aligned. Okay, so that's your second lesson. Lesson number 3, big one, you never know who's watching. And I think this is really big for podcasts because I sit behind this microphone and I'm speaking to you and I don't necessarily know who's listening. I can see how many people are listening, but I don't know who's listening. And what is beautiful to me and what I absolutely love is when I receive messages from people on LinkedIn or emails from people sharing that the podcast has helped. And I want to give a shout out to a few lovely listeners who have sent me messages recently. So one was Neil, who is an Australian, shared that he isn't my typical target audience, but he's benefited massively from the podcast. Another was Reese, who is based in Australia, also, and she was talking about how she's binge listened to the show, and it's really supported her in her most recent career transition. And then we had another one from Carolyn, who just wanted to reach out to let me know that the podcast was great and that she was finding it really useful because she really resonated with my background. So those are just a few, and I wanted to give a shout out. So if you guys are listening right now, thank you for reaching out to me. I really, really appreciate the feedback. But you never know who's listening. I didn't know of these people before they reached out to me, but I am showing up and I'm sharing my perspective. So when you're going about your day in your career and you're doing things, know that you never know who's listening or you never know who's watching. So you might not recognize that the work that you're doing is being recognized, but that doesn't mean it isn't. Okay, so don't think, well, this is a waste of time, there's no point me showing up, there's no point me sharing my perspective, there's no point, because you never know who's listening, who's watching, and where opportunities might come in the future because you were willing to show up. And that leads me on to the fourth point, which is your perspective matters. My perspective matters. There are lots of career change podcasts out here. There are lots of career development resources out here, but there is no one who is sharing the perspective in the way that I am, because there's only one me. And so recognizing that even if there are lots of people doing what it is that you want to do, or there are lots of people applying for the type of job that you want to go for, know that there's only one you, and that your perspective and your approach to things absolutely matters. And recognize that you have a unique perspective or a unique blend of experience, background and skills to bring to the table. And so own that and do it. Bring it to the table. I so appreciate people giving me feedback and lovely listeners who become clients who I'm able to support, and them share with me why it was that they felt that I was the person to support them. And there's various different reasons, but they're reasons nonetheless. So I've learned that my perspective matters, and I want to encourage you that your perspective also matters. And then the last one is that there are other people in your shoes. There are other people in your shoes. Often when you are in circles where you are the only one, potentially feeling the way that you're feeling or doing the thing that you're doing, it can be so easy to feel isolated or feel like you're the only one. But what I've realized from podcasting and getting in community with other podcasters, and from leading out in group programs and guiding groups of women through career development and career change programs, I have learnt that a lot of people are in the same boat, despite the fact that we have people coming from different parts of the world, from different industries, from different backgrounds. Similar challenges come up time and time again. So if you recognize that you're not the only one, then know that there are ways and solutions that can support you through whatever challenge you're currently facing. So even if you feel alone, know that you're absolutely not. There's like 8 billion of us in the world now. And so the likelihood of you being the only person who's facing any of the challenges that you're facing, or having the questions that you have, or wondering what you're wondering, is very, 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 very slim. And so I hope that you take that as encouragement that you are not the only one. So those are the 5 things that I wanted to share around what I have reflected on and the lessons that I've taken away from this journey up to this point. And now I want to talk to you about something really, really exciting. So as we've approached episode 200, I started thinking about, what do I want for the podcast going forward? We have been going and producing content and putting out episodes after episode after episode. And what I would love is to take my connection with you as a listener to a deeper level. We have been producing the podcast, and then we, like I said, I get messages from people, but beyond that, I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know what's going on behind the what do we call it, the headphones. And so I've decided that now is a fantastic time for us to launch a community just for you, the podcast listeners, and I'm going to call it the Podcast Insider Community, the CCM Podcast Insider Community. And it's going to be a space where I'm going to be sharing some exclusive content. So I'll still be producing this weekly show, but I'm going to be producing some exclusive content that's specifically for the insiders in the community. I'm going to be asking for your feedback on what you want to learn more about and what topics you want me to cover, and I'll be covering those. I'm also going to be hosting monthly career planning sessions for those in the community, because it's all well and good to set goals, goals, but what I found is when there isn't a specific plan or there isn't enough accountability, it's really difficult to stay on task, especially when you are busy. So we're going to be hosting some live events inside of the community like that. I'm going to be sharing with you more of the behind the scenes. I've been through so many career transitions, including the most recent one, which is going from working as a lawyer part-time and running my business on the side to becoming a full-time business owner. So I want to share with you some of the highs and lows of making a career transition and what happens on the other side, the highs and lows of working motherhood, of juggling all the things, because I think it'll be useful for many of you to see how I'm navigating it and the lessons that I'm learning along the way. Also, early on this year, we ran an in-person event, which was absolutely amazing. And it's my plan to host more in-person events in 2023. So if you are an insider, you get first dibs on tickets and potentially discounts so that you can attend and be in person with me as well. So those are a few of the benefits of joining. There will be others as well. One of the big ones actually is community. So you will get the opportunity to connect with other listeners of this show, to meet people from around the world, to connect and to be encouraged if you are at similar stages in your career to them. So if you want to learn more about how you can join and sign up as one of our founding members of this community, then head over to careerchangemakers.com/insiders and it will take you to the page where you can learn more, and then you can sign up and I will see you inside of the community. It'll be so awesome to actually connect with you, to have conversations with you, to answer your questions and all of that jazz, so that I'm not just communicating with you from behind my microphone. So if that sounds exciting, I'm super excited about it, then quickly head over careerchangemakers.com/insiders and I hope to see you on the inside. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. Episode 200. There are going to be some changes. We're going to be having some more amazing guests come and join us on the show, and various other things are in the pipeline. But the one thing that I wanted to highlight is the community that we are now launching to mark the fact that we've reached this amazing milestone of being at episode 200. All right, that's all I have for you today. I'm going to be back very, very soon with excitement and definitely be inside of the community sharing some bonus episodes and bonus content. Hope to see you there. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep advancing towards your career goals. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any future episodes. Also, I would love to know what your biggest takeaway has been from today's episode. Come over and join us in our Career Changemakers community over on LinkedIn so that you can join the conversation there.